Hello there, gamerinos and gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today I'm going to tell you whether or not Neo, The World Ends With You is worth your while. So this is the sequel to The World Ends With You, originally released in 2007 for the Nintendo DS. And once again, you have to play the Reaper's game to save your soul from erasure. And once again, this game is super stylized and features a pretty awesome, kinda funky soundtrack. And even some songs from the first game made it into the sequel. While the new and I guess updated art style still looks pretty cool, the 3D environments and characters aren't as stylish as all the 2D art of the first game. Environments in the old game looked unreal and expressionistic, and the low FPS 2D animations really underscored the comic-like aesthetic. This new game features actual 3D environments, so the level design is more grounded, but the polygon-based characters look more like they belong in a PS2 era cel shading game. It doesn't really look bad because it works with the chosen art style, but it's just missing something the original had. But because of that, the moments when the perspective is broken and rigid architecture bends to artistic vision are even more stunning. Since this is now a full-blown console release, gone are the handheld conventions, or more precisely, the touchscreen gameplay. In the original, you had to tap the screen or draw lines to move your character and activate your attacks. And it worked well enough, most of the time. Though the Switch version translated it into pretty bad motion controls when in dock mode. The new game lets you move around with the left analog stick and activate your attacks with a button press. So while you still fight the same monsters and use the same attack pins as before, it plays completely different. You're also not alone anymore during battles, with your partner hidden behind just another attack. Now you have a full team and are able to control each and every one of them, kinda. Every party member can equip a different pin, and every pin has its own designated button and activation method. So one pin is activated by pressing the X or triangle button, another is activated by holding down the left shoulder button. Things like that. As soon as you have a full party, it can get a bit confusing, especially when the button layout changes every time you swap pins. And I for one have a really hard time keeping an eye on my pin energy and recharge, because you can only use an attack a few number of times before it has to recharge, and every pin has a different recharge time. So there were a few times where I really tried to attack an enemy and didn't really notice that the character's attack hasn't fully recharged yet. Well, and then there are the ultimate attacks. In the first game you had to simultaneously attack with your pins and use your partner to build up synchronization and unleash a massive finisher. But in this game you have to attack an enemy a few times or knock them back to trigger the drop the beat gauge, where you have to attack with a different character in time to build up groove. And when you reach 100% groove, you can unleash a devastating attack that differs depending on what pin you used to build up the groove. So fights become an incredible spectacle because you collect so many different attacks and can combine them in a myriad of different ways. And the kickass soundtrack just keeps you pumped throughout it all. By defeating enemies you earn XP to level up your party and raise your maximum HP. And by doing well during battles you earn PP to level up your equipped pins. Pins get stronger with every level and sometimes even evolve into an even stronger version. And some of the pins you can only get through evolution. To raise your character's stats, like attack or defense, you can buy and equip clothes and also eat in restaurants. Food permanently raises some of a character's stats, but also fills them up, and you can only eat more food if it doesn't fill you above 100%. And to decrease your satiety, you have to fight a bunch of monsters, which earn you even more XP and pin points. Since this is an anime JRPG, you meet tons of fascinating and colorful characters, all of them pretty weird, and by interacting with them and spending points in a sub-menu, you can deepen your friendship and gain access to a bunch of abilities that can be more or less helpful depending on your playstyle. Stuff like increasing or decreasing the game's difficulty, giving you an option to change your loadout before you retry a battle, increasing a vendor's inventory, letting you equip more powerful attacks, or decreasing the HP loss for when you manually decrease your character's level. Because in this game it's a viable strategy to lower your party's level, because this in turn raises the item drop rate. And if you want to get a specific pin or just want to grind for money, it's always a good idea to lower your level by a few points and chain a few battles together to really get the multiplayer going. And well, yeah, there are no random battles in this game. If you want to fight something, you have to scan your surroundings and run into red enemy symbols. And the more enemy symbols you chain together, the stronger they get and the longer the battle lasts, but it also rewards you with a higher chance to get items. But yeah, the heart of any JRPG are the characters. And when it comes to this game's characters, well, their designs as well as their dialogues are very eccentric and over the top, which was also the case in the first game. Tetsuya Nomura, the guy who slowly ruins games and franchises if he gets too much power as a director, returns as producer and character designer. His style can be a bit much at times, but it's very welcome in a game like this, that's all about self-expression and is heavily inspired by street gang and skater culture. Even in 3D, the environment has this hand-drawn look. Brand logos look like graffiti, and I mean, there's graffiti everywhere. Battles start with a record-scratching sound and, well, I already mentioned the soundtrack. The story is fine, sometimes a bit contrived, but the character interactions are overall well written. But the inclusion of some of the missions and gameplay elements into the story are a bit ham-fisted or silly. The game, or at least the story progression, is also incredibly linear, and sometimes the game suffers from well duh syndrome, where the player knows what to do but isn't allowed to, because the game wants to keep the characters in the dark for a bit longer. And it sadly wastes the potential of some pretty neat abilities. The ability to imprint ideas into people's heads returns from the first game, and while its use is still highly situational, you can at least find and collect different thoughts all across Shibuya and have to find out the correct combination for yourself. And sometimes multiple combinations result in a win state, so you can be a bit creative. Then you can remind people of certain things. This can only be done at specific times to specific NPCs, and all you have to do is wiggle the left and right analog stick around until you rearranged a picture. That's it. You can dive into people's mind, but there you only have to fight against some monsters. And then you can turn back time, which is the most complex and also the most tedious ability. The game tells you to when exactly you can go back to, and then you have to talk to the right NPC or find the correct clue to use in a different moment in time, and sometimes this leads to a forced back and forth between the same few moments until you accomplished all that you had to do. It's still fine because all these abilities are just window dressing and are here to connect all the dialogues. And well, the story and character stuff is the main draw of a JRPG, and I'd say this game delivers in that regard. So you get a fun story with some deep themes the more you progress, a big cast of interesting characters, intentionally cringy but highly entertaining cool kids dialogue, a fantastic soundtrack, fast-paced battles with fully customizable attack combinations. So what more would you want from a JRPG? So if that's up your alley, go get the game and enjoy the ride. And maybe even take a look at the first game, because there are some recurring characters and references to the events of the first game. And also, the original was pretty good as well. Just be warned though, that this game is a bit weird, so keep that in mind. And with that, I bid you adieu. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again on the next game.